Kathy Jenkins and I this is our 5th year on this roadshow, and I think we've got it down to a science. I enjoyed doing this for a couple of reasons. One, it's a good way for us to collaborate and just sort of make sure that everybody is hearing the same thing at the same time. But I think it's also good. I always pick up new things because there's different questions that get asked every year. And no matter how many times I read the collective bargaining agreement, and I read it for different things every week. I even keep a copy at home in case something comes up over the weekend and I need to refer to it. But this is such an important process for faculty. I remember when I put my package in, it seems like a long time ago, we had to do 2 dossiers, one for promotion and one for tenure. And the 2 were not at the same time, which is one of the things I like about ours. You only have to do 1 dossier and it makes it a lot easier to do. But this is, in my head, tenure and promotion isn't just tenure and promotion at the institution. In my head, it's also tenure and promotion within your discipline, that you are becoming the expert in whatever you're just prescribed, not only the discipline, but your area of content expertise within that discipline. And to me, this is really beginning that documentation that you're the person that we go to for special topics, or one of my things I'd like to try to get done this year is have a guest speakers page where we highlight faculty members with their areas of expertise, so that when they do the news in Albuquerque, it's not always New Mexico State or UNM. I'd like to see some New Mexico Highlands faculty listed up there with some of their areas of expertise, and they get asked to speak on various topics. I mean, we have some absolutely talented folks that teach for us, and it'd be nice for them to be highlighted both at the state level, but even nationally. So I'm excited that we're doing this to help you move forward. In the faculty meeting, I guess it was yesterday, it's already beginning to meld. Kathy made a statement that I think is really critical. You should not be getting to put your package in for tenure and promotion. There should be no surprises at that point. And I think this is one of those steps that we're trying to do every year to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I will turn it over to Dr. Jenkins, and we're going to kind of go back and forth. And when you're ready, Kathy, I'll bring up the slides.
Great. And thank you, Roxanne. That was a wonderful welcome for everybody. And my name is Kathy Jenkins. I am a professor of exercise physiology in the Department of Exercise and Sports Sciences, and also the president of the Faculty Association. I enjoy giving this presentation with Roxanne, and I'm sure that you all came because we're riveting presenters, and that this is such exciting information, tenure and promotion, and looking at the CBA. Or you wanted to see us eaten by the mountain lion that's roaming around. Either way, it's going to be a fun time. I think it's really important to really think about what tenure and promotion means, because it's important to all of us. It's important to the university. It gives stability and academic quality. It improves our programs, improves what we offer to our students. And so it's a formative process. There's a steps that you take as you go through to prepare for tenure, so that by the time that you get there, as Roxanne said, you're ready. You have been making a journey through your academic life. Now, one of the things I want to tell you, and we're going to tell you this to you a few times, is that I know a lot of you. Some of you I haven't yet met face-to-face, but I've met a lot of you. And one of the hardest things that faculty have is to talk about themselves. They think, well, everybody knows me. It's not a big deal. I don't have to say that. Well, you do. The tenure and promotion process is all about documentation. You're not there on a little videotape talking to people. It's like your paper, your presentation, whatever it is, that's it. And so you have to step outside of your comfort zone and learn how to really share everything that you do. And I'll tell you, as an evaluator of dossiers, it's one of my favorite times of year. It's like graduation almost to me, because you learn so much about your colleagues. You can't believe, like, someone that you talk to every single day, and you're like, wow, I had no idea that you do that. And so as you think about this process, and as you think about putting together a dossier, think about the fact that you need to document everything that you do. Talk to us about everything that you do so that we can see a complete picture. And again, I know, and Roxanne knows, that's one of the hardest things for faculty to do. but we got to get out of there. And that's why we like to present here. I'd also like to say that mid-year, we also do a presentation on how to put together a dossier, so the nuts and bolts of a dossier. And so that's always the second part that we do later on. So this will be focused about process today. So that's all I had. Thank you so much for coming today. And I would encourage you to ask questions along the way.
And we have some seasoned faculty who are tenured joining us today, and they are an outstanding resource for you as well. And so some of the questions might be better answered by them, depending on what you ask. So are we ready to roll? All right, let's see if I can share the screen. Okay, I said I was going to manage this, but now I can't find the forward button. There we go. So this is who we are and what we're doing. So Kathy, you want to take this one, and then we're going to be flipping back and forth.
Absolutely. One of the tenure promotion in our CBA is found in Article 23. And Article 23 is all about evaluation. And so what this slide does is it talks a little bit about the 3 different types of evaluation that we have at Highlands. Tenure and promotion is the last of those steps. So the first thing that we do is we all participate in annual evaluation. Anybody on tenure track does that every year. And that evaluation looks at teaching and advisement, your scholarship, research, and creative works, and the service. Those 3 areas we're going to refer to as we go through this presentation as the triad. So you're going to present on the triad. Now, annual evaluation is an evaluation by your peers of what you are, or how you are doing, at your current rank. And so if you're an assistant professor and you do your annual evaluation, your peers will evaluate you as an assistant professor. It has nothing to do with how you're doing in the future. It has nothing to do with whether or not you'll get tenure. So that happens. Annual evaluation is due the 3rd week of school in the fall semester. This year, all tenured faculty also will be doing annual evaluation because we do it every other year. So all tenured faculty this year and tenure track faculty will be going through annual evaluation. Now, if you're in your tenure year, so the year you come up for tenure, you don't have to do annual evaluation, and that'll be on the slide later on. Now, at the end of annual evaluation every fall, we go through reappointment. And reappointment is when the tenured faculty of your department get together, they evaluate you. They may look at annual evaluations, but they say, ask a different question. They say, is this person progressing towards tenure and promotion? And so reappointment is on your progress towards tenure. And that's where Roxanne said a statement that we all believe in, is that because you're being assessed on your road towards tenure in your reappointment every year, you should know whether or not you're getting there. And so if you should never go out for tenure and not get it and be surprised, because you should have that information from your peers in your evaluations all along. The purpose of reappointment is to have your peers tell you, hey, you're doing great. We just see this one little area we think you can improve on. So they help you in that journey towards tenure and to meeting all the benchmarks for tenure. And then tenure and promotion takes place in your 6th year, which we'll see. And it looks at the triad, but it also looks at 2 other things that sometimes people forget. And one is that you must demonstrate when you're up for tenure, your excellence in teaching. So it's beyond just looking at the triad part of teaching. It's extra. You have to demonstrate your excellence in teaching to get tenure. So you can think of all different kinds of creative ways in order to do that. And you think there are many, many different ways. There are many things that you use within your classroom creatively. Some of us know, some of us use the same thing. Some of us use completely different things. And so think about that now. How would you demonstrate excellence? And then the second is, what is the individual attention that you give to students? Because you need to bring that out in your dossier as well. Thank you.
I'll let you continue with this, and then I'll take the next one.
Kathy, I had a quick question, Kathy. I'm sure you're going to get to this later, but will you be talking about the fact that we haven't been doing semester at the end of the semester course evaluations and what people should do about that?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
That's going to be later. Yeah. But yeah, it's we are in a little snafu place still about course evaluations, but we'll be getting that taken care of hopefully at the beginning of this semester. That's our aim. But we will talk about course evaluations later. But thank you, Gloria. So just to continue on. So annual evaluation, like I said, everybody participates in that, tenured and tenure track. And it just is an evaluation on how you're doing, as I said, at your current rank. And so it's really important to recognize and remind everybody, please, that everybody's annual evaluation is due in 3 weeks. The only people that don't have to do annual evaluation are those in their first year on tenure track, because we can't evaluate you if you've only been here 3 weeks. And then those that are in their tenure year, right? They don't have to do it because they'll be doing the dossier itself. And so that I've already explained everything else on the slide. So I think that's good.
So do this one because it's all kind of the same thing, and then I'll run to the next one.
Cool. So tenure promotion is like the end of the road for people on tenure track. And it's a very intensive evaluation on your progress towards tenure, right? The road to tenure. And so as we talked about, it's those 3 things, the triad, plus your demonstration of teaching, plus what you do for students. So those 5 things have to be in a dossier for tenure. Now, tenure expectations at Highlands, or where you need to be, those are determined to be at the rank of associate professor. And so you will, if you're an assistant professor, when you come up for tenure, and you are granted tenure, be automatically promoted to associate professor because they have the same classification, the same qualifications. And so those 2 things happen simultaneously. You only need 1 dossier, as Roxanne said. Now, there are some people that it doesn't happen very often, but it could, where somebody may be applying for both tenure and promotion to full professor. That would take 2 separate evaluations, because first the person has to be evaluated at the level of associate professor to see whether or not they are deserving of tenure. And then next, they would also have to be evaluated as to whether or not they have higher expectations to reach the rank of full professor. And so those would be 2 separate processes that would take 2 separate committees, because they would be looking at different sets of criteria. Normally, we don't have people in that boat, but it is possible. So I just wanted to explain it to you. So in our CBA, if you go through and you look at what a description is of an associate professor, that's the description of somebody with tenure at Highlands. Tenure promotion is a process that takes place in the spring, and the notification is given to the faculty member at the end of the spring by the president. And so it's a 1 semester process. It goes through a very intensive evaluation that we're going to talk about. And the decision is made then at the end of the spring. Thank you.
So I want to add a little piece to that, and that occasionally when we bring on new faculty, we give them 1 or 2 years towards tenure. So when you put your dossier together, it's not just your time at Highlands. It would include, let's say you had 2 years towards tenure at University of Green Tree. I'm making that up. So you would include those the previous 2 years that you did at the University of Green Tree as your entire part of your dossier. So it's not just your Highlands time. If you've received time towards promotion and tenure here, it includes what you did previously to encompass that full 5-year process. So I think that's really important. So the process itself is pretty well laid out in the Faculty Association CBA. It's also laid out, I think, very well. The deans and chairs get a timetable of during week 1, this is what happens. During week 2, here's who reviews it. And we'll send these slides out to everybody as well, just so that you have these as a handy dandy reference. But remember, you're doing tenure and promotion. So they're looking at your package kind of, there used to be a commercial of two in one type of thing. So your dossier represents your work as a faculty member towards rank, but at the same time, you're making an argument of here's why I should be here at Highlands for my career. And, you know, Kathy mentioned earlier, tenure is such a remarkable event in terms of employing people nationwide. higher ed is one of those very few organizations that says, we want people to be here. We want to keep them. We want to retain them, because it's too hard, one, to bring new people in. And number two, from my experience, we know how fast we can work in higher ed. And we really do need folks who are committed to the institution and the students and the curriculum, that can modify the curriculum as time goes forward, as changes in your discipline change. Maybe there's a new requirement to go to the next level for degree. Maybe I'll use education. Their accrediting body shifted this last couple of years, so they had to change some of their competencies. Well, that also changes at the faculty level. So, when I talk about doing online programming, this is great, but in my head, we still need a tenured faculty to manage those programs, because we need someone that we know knows who we are, our status, our requirements. And it's the tenured faculty that help make those decisions of who we hire. And so that is really critically, it's the historical history of that particular department, if you will. The tenured faculty are the senior leadership that really has a solid understanding of what the program has been like and where maybe it needs to go. And so tenure for me is a really important process. And basically the department, your peers will review you, your dean reviews you. We have a tenure and promotion committee that's made up of individuals, and I won't go into the details, but it's in the collective bargaining Article 23 of how many people from each school. But if you're in social work and you're going up for promotion and tenure, somebody who's in social work cannot review your dossier. So we try to relieve and get rid of those, what do you call them, conflicts of interest right away. So that panel of the promotion and tenure panel review, what's it called?
It's called the review panel.
Thank you. My head just totally went blank.
And don't, we have slides about it coming up, Roxanne.
Okay, good. Thank you. Then I can remember what it's called. But they make recommendations. The recommendations come to me, and I make my final recommendations to Dr. Minner. But what's most important is Dr. Minner makes his final decisions. The faculty member along the way, as these reviews come in, there is a point in there where I get everything. I then turn those over to the faculty to make comments. They also get the comments from the deans as their peers make comments. So there's opportunity for faculty to respond back to, well, they missed this piece. I'm not sure that this is an accurate statement, but there's an opportunity for the faculty member to review the comments and make responses to them. And this is the next slide of the promotion committee. Kathy, you want to talk a little bit about it? I mean, this tells you the details of it, but it's really a very important committee. This is probably one of the most important committees on campus.
Sure. Universities have different models on the way that they evaluate tenure and promotion. And so you saw that your peers, your dean, everybody in your academic area evaluates you. And then usually in university process, there's an external evaluation. Well, at Highlands, like at a lot of comprehensive universities, our external evaluation is done by other tenured faculty on campus who are not in your discipline or department. And that's what Roxanne is explaining. So this is like an outside eyes. These are people who may or may not know the person. They don't work with the person on a day-to-day basis like everybody in the first part of the evaluation does, peers, deans, et cetera. And so again, we're calling them like outside eyes. And so realizing that, you should think when you put a dossier together that it's important to recognize your audience. So some of the people you're going to know, some of the people you may not have ever met. Or if you have met them, it's like on this, like we're this big on a little screen and you don't really get to know the person because it's on Zoom. And so think about the fact that the tenure process itself has both internal and external parts. So this tenure and promotion committee is comprised of 3 tenured faculty from each school and 6 from the college. From the college itself, because arts and sciences is so broad, there are 3 that are selected from math and sciences and 3 from the arts and humanities. Everybody is tenured, as I said. They're all elected by their colleagues in their schools or college. And then that's the overall committee. And then what we do is based on the number of people that come up for tenure or promotion, Roxanne's office does some magic and randomly assigns people to what we call review panels. And then the review panels are the actual subcommittees. It's made of 5 faculty. No more than 3 of those 5 can be from the College of Arts and Sciences, because again, that's half of the overall tenure and promotion committee. And then no review, no person can serve on a review panel if they're in your same department. And that's what Roxanne explained before. And again, thinking about it, these are people that are external for the review. And so these are, again, this is our external review at Highlands. It's similar to many comprehensive institutions. At R1 institutions, sometimes they'll send dossiers out to experts in the field and have evaluations done and make that a part of the process. We do not do that at Highlands. This is our external review. And so, and again, so 5 people will be evaluating the dossier and sending their recommendations, as you saw from 2 slides before, to Roxanne, based on what they evaluated on the dossier.
And just so you know, there are some institutions that do it blind. You don't know who the dossier is from. All the personal information is removed, especially at large R1s, where you might have 40 people going up at a time. But I want to emphasize again the simple fact that your audience, when you do your dossier, they may or may not know you. You may be working fully at a campus center and maybe rarely come to Las Vegas. And we do have faculty from across all of our campus centers as well as Las Vegas. So it's not just made up of folks that are here in Las Vegas, just to let you know, we pull from all faculty. And we have a little magic formula that Ian put a spreadsheet together that randomly assigns folks. And then we get into looking to see, is there any conflict of interest? Then we have to kind of go back and manually swap this person for that person, but it all works out. But I'm going to stress this several times. This is, your dossier speaks for who you are. We're not very good sometimes at promoting ourselves. This is the time where you say, I am so wonderful. You want to make me a full professor and skip associate. I'm so darn good. But then there are things that you have to do that are your responsibility. And the first one, and I love doing this because I will get a few emails right after we click off here. I need to know from you whether or not you're going up for promotion and tenure for your 6th year. Now, I need to have that information by the 15th of October, no later than. And I ask that people send it not only to me, but to Priscilla, CC her. If you're going up for promotion, you already have tenure, it's the same deadline. For both tenure or promotion, I need to be notified by the 15th. We then verify based on our records of whether or not you're eligible. If you had time towards tenure, we look at all that, and then we send you a note of an email saying, yep, you're good to go. Start putting your dossier together.
Let me just make a real quick statement here, because this is how serious this is. This is CBA language.
Yes.
What happens if you don't submit by October 15th? You got to go. You can't sit for tenure. You have to leave the university. You don't even get another year because you didn't fulfill the process. So you have to do it. And that's why, please, when you leave right now, or even right now when you're sitting here, if you're up for tenure promotion this year, just send her right now an email. Right now, I feel like I'm on one of those talk shows. Right now, as we're speaking. If you do it now, we'll get you 2. But send it to Roxanne right now, because that way you won't forget. And it is heartbreaking when people forget. We try all different kinds of things and try to, figure out ways to help people. But if you don't make the deadline, you can't do it. And there's no option for tenure. If you're in your 6th year, you have to go up for it or you have to leave. So please send the email right now. Thank you.
And like I said, usually right after this, I'll go into my box and there'll be 5 or 6 responses right away. I'm planning to do such and such. And that's great because it gives us a chance to really make sure that you're eligible. A couple of times we found that folks actually were ineligible because of, and they had to wait a year based on time and tenure. But rather do it now and not have I haven't had anybody miss the deadline. We've had folks miss other things. So what I want to emphasize is this is language in the collective bargaining. So because it's in the collective bargaining, there's an assumption that the faculty member will do what they're supposed to do. And there's an assumption that administration will do what we need to do. And it's week by week. So if you're up for promotion and tenure this year, get that collective bargaining and take out those pages on Article 23, stick it over your headboard and read it every night and make sure, maybe do a little checklist for yourself. And so we go through this every year. There's, I don't know if we want to go into detail, but it's really important that you start working on your dossier today, because spring is going to get here faster than you can think. You're going to want to take some time off at the holiday season, between December and January, and putting one of these together is not an easy task, because the one thing that is critical for everybody who's reviewing it is documentation. Documentation. It's the only way we know that it's kind of like the HLC. We say, we did this. Okay, if we don't put any evidence, you said you did it, but how do we know you did it? And so things along the lines of cover sheets or your articles that you've been written, or a table of contents from your book that you've done, or PowerPoint presentations from the conferences, things you've done with your students, a list of students if you're working with master's students that you've gotten graduated. So the documentation is really, really very important. So I don't know if we want to go through these step by step, Kathy, because we're going to send them these, but literally every week you've got a job to do. And as we get closer to when things get submitted in the spring semester, the workload, once you turn it in, it works over to the department. Your peers will have an opportunity for that's about a 2-week opportunity to review your dossier. The dean will review, the review panel reviews it. And I see all of that. The review panel, and what I get from the review panel is I don't get individual comments by page. If Kathy was on it, I don't get Kathy's comments. I get a summary of what everybody said and what the vote is. So there's actually a vote as they go to the final process with the review panel. I have a little rubric that I use based on what the department says are the criteria for promotion and tenure, and every department will have their own standard. You can't have the same standard for music, for example, as you might for chemistry. They have 2 very different disciplines and 2 very different ways of demonstrating competency and expertise in their area. And so that's included in your dossier as well. And really those comments are so important to see where the trends are of how people review those documents. It comes to my office. I use a rubric. I read everything that's there. And while the dean's reading and doing their evaluation, the review panel is doing theirs. And all of that comes to me. And I guess what I would say is you prepare a dossier. We have an outline for you that you have to check off to make sure that all the components are there. That outline is critically important to stay with it. There's no page limit to a dossier. It all depends on your field and how much you want to put in. We're going to talk about some, except on Tuesday, rules that we've had to put into place in a little bit, but I'm going to put the next slide up. So this is the final process. I send it over with a recommendation. Dr. Minner sees all of the review panel comments. He gets a copy of all the various comments himself as well as the dossier. So he will often read the dossiers as well. It's such an important process that I would hate to learn that somebody really didn't do their job and review that dossier, because it's somebody's career. It's critically important that we take the time to read it. And I actually sometimes, if it's a hard copy, I'll put some cool little comments like, "Oh my gosh, I never knew this. Can we do this here at Highlands? Are you willing to think about maybe doing something here?" Because there's some exciting pieces in those dossiers that you just, as Kathy mentioned, you have no clue what people are doing. And to find out that they're doing some amazing volunteer work outside of Highlands, or they've presented in places that we don't always get notifications when faculty present, or we get the publications pretty well. So Dr. Minner makes the final decision. I try to get these things out to him as quickly as possible. I think I've gone 2 to 3 weeks ahead of the deadline every year so that he can get them out. I know when you're waiting for that call or that letter to say, did I get promotion or tenure? Am I going to be able to get my sabbatical? You know, you're waiting for that email to come through so you can kind of take a deep breath and relax. So I try to get them done as quickly for about a week. That's my priority. I try to clear my calendar as much as possible to read them and then get them to Dr. Minner. And he typically does his decision-making within a week after he's reviewed everything. If he and I don't agree on a particular recommendation to him, we will talk about it. What I will tell you though, is we talk about every single dossier that comes forward. We sit down and we go through and I'll say, this is what's really cool about this one. Here's some areas that are of concern, but this one kind of weighs out this one. So we do talk about them. And so far, we've been pretty much on the same page. So that's the process. And before we do that, do we have any questions about the timeline and the process before we move to the next step? I don't see any hands up, but I've got you guys in little squares.
Actually, Roxanne, it's Gloria.
Yeah.
I was just asking Priscilla for an electronic copy of that timeline. She said it's not on online documents. Is there some way we can have access to it?
I thought it should be on online documents. Well, the chair.
She said University Relations is not uploading it anymore to online documents.
Okay, I will make a note. I will send it out to all faculty, all CBA faculty, because it's a great little timeline. I mean, it has
absolutely
got the dates in there week by week.
Absolutely, it's very helpful. So yes, thank you.
You know, I'm going to be doing an email on Monday with a whole bunch of different chunks. And I will include this because even if you're tenured and have tenured, you're going for promotion, or it's good for everybody to have this anyway. So I'll send the timelines, and I'll send the timelines not only for that, but for other things that are required as well. Okay, I will do that. That'll go out on Monday. Okay. Thank you, Gloria. Classroom observations. Did I lose people?
No, we're here.
Okay.
We're here. We're here.
Got really, really quiet. And I'm going, oh my gosh, did we lose it again? Okay, this one actually gets people confused. We had a lot of confusion last year. We, we had an MOA for last year, and we had a couple of new deans. And so there was a lot of confusion on classroom observations because everybody was doing distance. It was just a weird year last year. We still have to follow the protocols, but classroom observations, I think, are really important. Kathy brought this up at the chair's conversations yesterday. I think for me, the piece that's in my head, a classroom observation, peer-to-peer observation, or even a chair or dean observation is really intended to be a formative mentorship type of event. I worked for 2.5 years as an online faculty evaluator for a university. I was a full-time faculty, but I also, half of my job was to go into the online classroom with a rubric. And my job wasn't to get rid of faculty. My job was to help make them better faculty teaching online, asynchronously. And when I would do the evaluations, we would meet and say, you're not responding to the students. You're not posting the grades, in an 8-week term, you're not posting the first assignment till grade week 4. That's not appropriate. So this is really an opportunity for growth, I think, from a faculty perspective. I actually used to ask people to come into my class, especially if it was a new class that I was teaching, because people will see things that I'm doing that maybe I'm not seeing in myself, especially if you develop the course and put things in. So I just finished a course for professional development for an organization I belong to. And I invited the director of the program to go in and monitor it, because I'd never really done one for professional development for folks that are already deans and directors who were just looking for some leadership ideas. Kathy, you want to add anything else to this? I'm sure there's some other things I've forgotten.
Absolutely. Thank you. I want to remind you back to what we said about 20 minutes ago. There are 5 things that have to be in your dossier for tenure and promotion. the triad, which certainly teaching is a part of it. But also number 4 was demonstrate excellence in teaching. Demonstrate excellence in teaching. So every tenured faculty member, the chair, the dean, or designee are required to evaluate you at least once. The idea is we want to try to do it every year. That's what we're trying to move towards, like Roxanne said, a formative evaluation. But the reason is, how can somebody demonstrate excellence if they don't have very many evaluations by their peers? How would you know if they demonstrate excellence if you haven't taken the time, right, to evaluate? And so we have this evaluation, this classroom observation, because we all are a little bit different. We all use different modes of delivery. We all use different like little ways of getting things done, classroom management, whatever it might be. And while we're doing the observation, and again, it can be used in your dossier and your annual evaluation process, but the person evaluating you learns a lot about what you're doing too. And so sometimes people going into a classroom go, whoa, I didn't even know that was possible. That was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden, all of our teaching is improving, right? And that's what we're trying to do here at Highlands, is use this evaluation process, not in a punitive way, but a way in building the community, in a way of building the academic quality that we have here at Highlands. And classroom observations are one of the greatest foundations that we have for that. And so we believe really strongly in the power of these observations. And so again, everybody is supposed to be evaluated. If you don't get evaluated, if you are somebody up for tenure and promotion and no one has come to you to evaluate, go bug them. Say, hey, I noticed that you haven't come. Is there any way you could come? Because people will respond and they'll come and do the evaluation. You are not, though, if you're a person up for tenure and promotion, you are held harmless if nobody does come evaluate you. It's not a punitive thing. So if everybody's like, no, I refuse to evaluate you, Young. Young is like, well, I didn't do anything, so he's fine. But the other persons who refuse to do the evaluation, they actually violated the CBA, because the CBA says that every tenured faculty member has to evaluate, right? Every chair and every dean or designee has to evaluate. But we like to keep that person held harmless. But again, please help us in using this mechanism to improve all of our teaching, because it's powerful, right? It's powerful. Thank you.
And as Kathy mentioned, when I used to do that online, and I was teaching online as well, I learned so much from my colleagues who'd been doing it for longer than I had, of all these tricks of the trade that I had no clue about. And that's what we're supposed to be about, as a community of scholars, of sharing information. So Kathy just covered this. Any questions on the observations? The one thing I will suggest to everybody, and it's in the collective bargaining, but they shouldn't just pop into your classroom. Whoever's going to do your observation, or if you invite someone in, make sure that they tell you that you both agree on a date and time, even if it's an online class, of when they're going to pop in, for a lot of reasons. And it's not like you're going to change your teaching style just because they're in the classroom, but you may have an exam due, as this was brought up yesterday, you may have an exam due, presentations, who knows? Or maybe you have a medical appointment that day and you're going to be absent from class, and you've got somebody else in the classroom that day stepping in for you. But do make sure that when you get a notification that somebody's going to observe you, or you ask, that you are given the opportunity to make sure that you help set up those dates and times.
Elizabeth has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to ask this question. So how do we find out? So we've had observations in our department class, the classroom observation, but we haven't received a copy of those. So how do we get access to those copies?
Just ask the faculty member who evaluated you.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be anywhere except given to the person. They're not kept in a file. They're not kept at the department or the college. They're given back to the person. They have no other role. They shouldn't be anywhere else in the university.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and you can put those in your dossier. Most people do put them in their dossier. And then they will sometimes, let's say somebody says, I observed the class and there wasn't a lot of time for Q&A during this session. That gives you, the person who's developing that dossier, to say, this was brought up. But here's what I've done ahead of time, or it just provides opportunity for you. But most people do include those observations, but those are yours. Those are for your documentation. So Gloria, and then I see Dina. So Gloria, go ahead.
I just wanted you to address that there is no standardized form for those observations. So for those of us who are doing it, could you just talk a little bit about the form that people use or don't have to use?
There is no form. And the reason for that is it's a part of academic freedom, but every faculty member has a right to evaluate their peers however they would like and on what they think is important. Some departments, though, have developed a template just to kind of help guide people, but you don't have to use it. There's nothing required in the CBA. It's not devalued if it's in essay form or whatever you come up with. An evaluation is an evaluation. And so we encourage people to talk, certainly, but there is no form. And we have actually fought as a faculty to make sure that there isn't a form. Because if I go into one class in science, I'm going to be looking at something maybe completely different than what I would do if I go into art or if I go into a lab. And so there are different kinds of scenarios out there. So we do not use a standard form, and one is not required. And does that answer your question? Cool.
Some departments actually use the contingent form. And but some departments, as Kathy said, some schools actually have their own that they use as a standard. And it was probably, I'm assuming, created by the faculty because it's pretty simple, actually. And some are just memos. Went in on such and such a date. Here's what they covered. Looked at the syllabus. Here's the great things I saw. Here's a couple of areas what they might want to think about. And that's pretty much it. And I've never seen one longer than one page. Dina.
Hi, sorry, it's actually Deanna.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Is there a difference in the process or the evaluative criteria for if you're teaching undergraduate versus graduate level classes?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to go through that, Deanna, in just a second. The next part of our presentation is going to go through and highlight each of the different areas of the triad and to suggest to you the kinds of information that the CBA suggests, doesn't require, but suggests in the various areas, and things that other faculty have used in the past. And so there would be a variety of ways to demonstrate, but we require an excellence in teaching, right? And so it doesn't matter if you're teaching undergraduate classes or graduate, it has to be an excellence in teaching.
So we've covered this a little bit at the beginning on term, and it's a triad, and this is a triad that's really based on a Boyer model. He wrote a book years and years ago called Scholarship Reconsidered, where he put this forward. And most institutions have adapted this, and they've maybe added their own component to it. Every institution, and I would say every department actually modifies this to whatever their discipline really requires and expects. And I think it's really important for you to get with your department right away and get a copy of what their expectations are for teaching, scholarship, and service, because they'll be different. Again, I meant music will be very different than chemistry or biology. There's different kinds. They have performances. I can't imagine a chemistry teacher doing a performance on how you mix chemicals, So there are different expectations, but get that right away so that you can start working towards it, especially if you're not ready to go up yet. This will give you that benchmark to start looking at how you should start thinking about your dossier. I would also suggest you start your dossier today, even if you're not going up for promotion and tenure for 2 or 3 years, because I still keep a folder. When I do stuff, I put it in and I update my CV. That's kind of my dossier. Keep a folder of teaching, scholarship, and service, and put evidence in there so that you can start putting a binder together, or however you're going to do it, so that we can see those. Kathy, you want to add anything else related to any of this?
No, I would, when you, first of all, please look at the CBA. There's 2 parts of the CBA after this meeting, if you have some questions that I'd really like to direct you to. Number 1 is Article 23. In Article 23, when you get to the tenure section, It actually lists, which we're going to show you in a few minutes. We're probably going to have to go through pretty quickly because we're running out of time, but we'll show you what the requirements are. And then also Appendix A of the CBA, when our slideshow, I actually have it on my computer. I will bring it up to show you. Appendix A is the outline for every dossier. Doesn't matter if you're in music or chemistry, some of the examples Roxanne's using, everybody has the same outline. It's just what you are including in each of those areas is different because we have different disciplines. And so a lot of it is really, it's kind of organized already for you, and you have to use it and put your dossier together in that order. And so what we're going to show you here are what the CBA says are required in dossiers in each of the areas of the triad. And so to start teaching and advising, the first part of the triad, that's our most important responsibility at Highlands. That's why teaching is mentioned twice in the evaluation of tenure and promotion. Not only teaching and advisement as a part of the triad, but remember also that you have to demonstrate an excellence in teaching that is required. And so it's our paramount responsibility. So we need to see information in annual evaluations, in reappointment evaluations, and in tenure and promotion about academic advisor, the courses you teach, if you've developed new courses, if you teach independent studies or directed studies, your office hours. Don't say I held my office hours, everybody does. But if there's something really innovative that you do, if you supervise GAs and TAs, if you supervise other types of students or staff, and any sort of professional development you do according to teaching. Now, one thing I want to say here is people ask us this question all the time. If I have I did professional development today, and it actually crosses over between teaching and research, where do I put it? You put it in both places.
Could even be service.
You put it in service, yeah. And so you put everything, it's possible for things in a dossier to be in multiple places because they count for multiple things. There are 5 things. So that demonstration and teaching might have a lot of your teaching stuff that you put under teaching in the triad. And again, a professional development or presentation that you made might count for teaching as well, because maybe it's an evaluation of teaching as well as under your scholarship criteria. So things can appear more than once that you've done in your dossier.
Just don't put it in one section and say it also counts for, put it in the section that it needs to be in as well. But there's a lot of things that we all do that fits into several different categories. Like this course I just taught, I could put it into teaching, I could put it into service, and I could put it into scholarship because I was invited to be a faculty member for this particular group. So think broadly as you think about all the work that you've done. And yeah, we're running out of time. We have about 3 minutes, Kathy.
So one thing real quick, just to answer Gloria's question, here's where student evaluations come up. Student evaluations are required to be in a dossier, but we don't do student evaluations at Highlands. Our evaluation system pretty much broke about 4 years ago. It broke. Students, it was no longer confidential. Students could get in after they checked the grades. There was just no way to control it. So what we had to do is kind of halt the system. And right now the Faculty Senate and the administration and the Faculty Association, our union, all 3 are working together with groups to try to come up with a better way of doing these student evaluations. And then we'll present them all to the faculty for everybody's input, and then we'll work to get them adopted. But until we get that done, we don't have student evaluations here. And so it's totally allowable for faculty to do their own evaluations in their courses and include it here, but there is no university evaluation at this time. And it hasn't been, like I said, for 4 years, but we're working on it. Huh, Roxanne?
Yes, and actually, yeah, we're actually working on another piece that I want to, I hate to end this, but so we're doing them hard copy right now. Last year we did everything electronic, and faculty use different methods of doing it electronically. We are looking at technology to hopefully do the dossiers electronically. A new one was sent to me the other day that looks really promising. It's out of People Admin. And so we're trying to find some software where people can load up their documents into the various different categories and then just click a little button and it magically produces your dossier, just like that. So we are looking at a couple of things, but right now there is no requirement of how you want to submit this. And you can do a hard copy. I'm hoping we'll be able to do hard copies. But if you want to do it electronic and put it on a USB, that's fine too. Since I've been here, people have done a variety of ways. Let's see, we kind of touched on this one. The third bullet, please work with your department to get what they want you to do in terms of being eligible for promotion and tenure. That's really, really important. If you're in the arts, your scholarship's going to be your productions, the things that you direct or produce. The other one I want to hit real quick is service. Service comes in a variety of ways. We have the required service you have to do by the handbook and the CBA. But there's service that we do, I think that we forget, community service, representing NMHU at a conference, representing NMHU on a committee in town. So there's a variety of ways that service is included here. And so think broadly about your service. And because anytime you do something, they always ask, where do you work? I work at NMHU. So in many ways, you're always representing the institution. And I know when I had children, when they found out I was a faculty member in education somewhere, I was always asked to do stuff for the school, you know, to sit on a committee, to do a workshop for the teachers at that particular school. These are actually in the CBA. So I don't know that we really need to cover these in detail. What do you think, Kathy?
Yeah, I would just encourage you to look at the definitions of each rank. The purpose of having a definition for each rank is, number one, at your annual evaluation, that's what you're evaluated on. So for example, this is professor, so that's full professor. That tells you exactly what the expectations are. So assistant professor is defined, associate professor is defined. Remember that tenure is held at the rank of associate professor. So if you want to know, well, what does tenure look like? Look in the CBA under associate professor for what the category is, and you'll know exactly what the expectations are.
So I think this is important. So when you get promoted, your promotion takes place the following academic year. If you are not granted tenure, and Kathy mentioned this earlier, you have 1 year of contract that you can still work, but that would be your last year. And that's, go ahead, Kathy.
I was going to say, this is really important because it's happened before, you guys. You only have an extra year. The purpose of the extra year, if you're denied tenure, is to find another job, right? We're not cold-hearted. You just maybe weren't a good fit together. But if you are required to come up for tenure and you choose not to, you have to leave immediately. You don't get an extra year. And so that's a really important thing. There are some people who don't, they make the decision that they don't want to go up for tenure in their last year, which is fine. They don't have to, because they know they want to go in and get another job. Well, they have to leave. They can't stay at Highlands because they didn't fulfill the tenure requirement.
You'll see when you look at the collective bargaining agreement and when we send out the timeline, that when the faculty member gets their comments, they have an opportunity to respond to those comments. They also have an opportunity to recall their dossier. Well, if you recall your dossier, what you're saying is you're not going forward, so you would be done. If you're put in for professor, you've already tenured and you recall your dossier, that's fine, because you can always put in for it the next year. But the critical piece is if you recall your dossier and you have not achieved tenure yet, you're done. So I think that's really important. And we'll close with, you've heard this a couple of times, maybe more than a couple. You need to tell your story. Many people won't know who you are. They won't know what you've done. They won't know about your accomplishments. They won't know what you did at a prior institution if you were getting 1 or 2 years towards tenure. And for me, the big piece, and I saw it, documentation, just like HLC. Well, we do this, this, and this. Okay, where's the evidence that you do it? Evidence and documentation is the bulk of your dossier, actually. I presented at this conference. I had this article published. Okay, so show us the documentation that proves that you did it. Tell us your story. You have to include a teaching philosophy. And so that's the stuff I really like to see. And sometimes, you get to do some qualitative pieces to this as well. But that documentation tells your story. Kathy, any final comments or questions?
I think that's an excellent wrap up. I know that Roxanne has to leave immediately. I'll stay on. And if you stop your share, Roxanne, what I'll do real quick is share my screen on Appendix A.
Okay.
The outline that we're talking about.
Oh, I'm sharing again. Hang on. I got to get my little buttons. Okay. I do have to step out because I have to be back for the board meeting at 1. So thank you all. Kathy can answer any questions. I'm here to answer questions, and we will send out the timeline for you all.
Excellent. Thank you, Roxanne.
Thank you all.
So you guys, this is what Appendix A looks like. And so you can see that the table of contents has 7 sections in the dossier. And this is why we put on another training later on in the year about how do you make a dossier. So first you have a cover letter, and you're just basically saying, hey, I'm applying for tenure and promotion. And you tell a little story about yourself. Who are you? How long have you been here at Highlands, et cetera. Then you do a self-evaluation. There's a form for that. Then you give a narrative history of yourself that's more in depth than what you said in your introduction, just talking about your faculty life at Highlands. And then we come to the 3 areas of the triad. You'll see that there has to be, she told you, so we want to see what your teaching philosophy is. We want to see what kinds of activities do you do in teaching and advising? What kind of evaluations do you have? And again, that's an iffy one because we're having problems with our evaluation system. Your observations of classroom teaching, right? We want to see those. Any professional development you've done or anything else you can think of. And people are creative. They'll say, I'm going to stop my share just for a second because I don't have to read everything to you because you can go to the CBA. But, we have people that say, I work with students on their theses or field projects every year, publishable paper or something like that. And the first page, after you get in is the acknowledgement page. And on the acknowledgement page, it says, oh, Dr. Kim is the most amazing kick-ass professor I've ever had. And that's unsolicited feedback, right? That's unsolicited. And so some people will copy those pages and put them in. So your documentation can be in a variety of ways. Sometimes students send you a nice little card and they thank you for something that you've done for them. It's unsolicited documentation. So documentation comes in a variety of ways. What we do encourage you, Roxanne mentioned today, is in your desk at home, probably right now, but make a little drawer, a little file. And every time something happens, put it in there. Because when it comes time every year to do your annual evaluation, most of us sit down and go, oh man, I can't even remember. What did I do this year? Did I work? I can't remember. And we forget half the activities that we do because again, very few of us know how to brag about ourselves and document everything that we do. And so try to collect that information. Do you guys have any questions?
Kathy.
Yeah.
So if like a student sent you a random email saying, thank you for doing all this for me, can you print that off and use that?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. All right, Sarah.
Can I use, so I've already been here for 5 years. Can I use anything from the last 5 years or does it need to start like now going forward?
Those are wonderful questions. And so we had a little question like that in the chat, but everything was going on so far. So your dossier is 5 years worth of information, the last 5 years. And so if you came up this year, yeah, you could use the stuff from before. But because you might be starting on tenure track right now and you're not going to come up for tenure till 6 years, you're going to have the 5 years on tenure track. If you came to the university 2 years ago and you're guaranteed 2 years towards tenure, well, you're going to have 2 years from where you were before and 3 years from here when you come up for tenure, right? Does that make sense to everybody? So we always have 5 years worth of information in the dossiers. What we don't want to do is in the old days, and I'll just share with you, I'm old. I'm starting my 26th year here at Highlands. My tenure dossier was this big. It was like, Young's laughing because you probably saw it. And it's like, it was huge. And it's like, we had to document everything. And it was like our entire career, I swear, since kindergarten. And it was like every single thing you've ever done. And so we've gotten smarter over time and said, well, this is ridiculous. What we really care about is how productive is this person in their last 5 years? Because you could be productive 10 years ago. But if you stop being productive, Are you really servicing the students? Are you really helping our curriculum in maintaining the excellence that we have? And so we want people to stay current. And that's why there's a 5-year requirement in any dossier. It shouldn't ever go beyond that. Bill.
Would it be worth mentioning the role of a mentor and the fact that they would need a mentor really to help in this whole process, however good we are, to have someone else's insights that have done it? I think would be valuable, but you can share.
Absolutely. You know, your mentor, we talked about that with new faculty and chairs. Every faculty member on tenure track is required to have a mentor or a mentoring team. And it's required to be kept on record. The department chairs are required to document every tenure track person every year to the deans and to the provost office to say who the mentors are. When you first get to the university, your mentor is assigned by the chair because you don't know anybody. But after your first semester, you can either keep the mentor you were assigned or change. It's up to you to decide how you want to be mentored. And then you ask that person like, hey, I have this dossier that I created for tenure. What do you think about it? And one of the positive things there is your mentor's probably been through tenure and promotion. They're probably a member of your department, so they know what they expect. So if a member of your department goes, oh my God, this is amazing, in your head, you have to go, cha-ching, that's one vote, right? Try to be practical about this. It's like, you want to always stay in contact with people, and your mentor is one of those people, or your mentoring team are that group of people that can help you out here. I always recommend that you do dry runs with your dossiers as you start putting them together. If you're going to go up for tenure and promotion in January, make sure you start showing it to people in your department. You don't have to, but make sure you start showing it to people October, November, and say, did I remember everything? Did I forget anything? Because people will give you feedback. This is an amazing place to work. People are really tight. Everybody I've met is very, very helpful. They just have to be asked, right? So share. It's the best way through. Anything else? Yeah, Daniel.
Yeah, my question is about surveys, and that's in relation to community service. There's a nonprofit that I'm helping to actually create curriculum for their literacy program. Somehow they're actually not in New Mexico, it's in New York. So I don't know if it's outside this constituency, if it's something I can actually document and present. That's number one question. The other question is about students as well. That I do have students in other universities that consults me, and I guide them regarding how to approach learning. Then sometimes I also go through some of their writings and I try to approve it for them because they understand I had background in journalism. So I just want to know if those are presentable.
Absolutely. First of all, I think you just defined service to your profession very eloquently.
Oh, okay.
You're serving your profession.
Okay.
Your profession is certainly the people that you work with at Highlands, but it's also your field, your discipline. And so that certainly counts. Some of that may actually translate over into the teaching part, any professional development or any consulting that you do that enhances your own teaching could certainly be documented in the triad as well. It could certainly cross over. Like we said, things can fit in multiple categories. It could certainly cross over into the scholarship research if you're publishing or if you're providing comments and things. So you can see how creatively dossiers can be put together because documentation is vast. And it's because we do so many different things.
Thank you.
Ali.
Yes, Kathy, so if you are going for promotion to the rank of professor after you have been granted tenure, you have your tenure dossier. Do you simply add the extra year that you think that you've done in extra year, or?
That's what I do. You have to take 1 year out and add a different year, right? Because it can only be 5 years. So you have to take out 1 year because you're adding a year.
Right. So essentially it'll be the same dossier, right?
Right. Take out the early stuff and add the later stuff. So it's still 5 years.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
You bet. You bet, you bet. But yeah, it's like, why recreate it, right? You only want to do this once. And then when I came up for tenure promotion, they were separate processes. So I came up for tenure first. Then a year later, I came up for promotion. And then 5 years later, I came up for my full professor promotion. And so it was like 3 different dossier processes. Well, you just do your dossier and then take things out, put things in, and just kind of keep it current. And it'll be so much more helpful to you all because it gets organized pretty much the same way. And again, always keep Appendix A in front of you because that's how we organize every dossier. But you can see just from some of the comments today, the creativity in your documentation. It's up to you, right? Any other questions? Well, I know we're about 5 minutes over. If you have any more questions, email Roxanne and I. We'll be glad to help you out. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you all later.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you, everyone. Have a good break. And we'll see you back here at 1. Have a good one.
I've made the same silly